Hello, and depending on where you are, it might either be good morning or good afternoon. I'm Deacon Adam, host of Stories That Work. My guest today is Greg Abdullah, and I don't really remember when we met. I think it might have been when you visited with your dad to St. Ignatius in Franklin, Tennessee.
Oh no, I go way back to when you were working at the Village as
Did
the
we meet at the Village?
guy in the horse barn. I was a camper, buddy. Oh yeah.
I was horse guy like all summer. That was 1998. Yes.
Yeah, buddy.
That was hard work. I didn't know you were a camper that summer.
I was a camper that summer. So I
Wow.
remember you from way back then.
Yeah. Some weird skinny dude riding horses all day. I don't know what happened to the skinny dude. Yeah.
It's fun times, man.
I have a couple announcements before we get into today's topic with Greg. As you may have seen in what we're posting, we're going to be talking about Greg's research in youth ministry and his current work that he's doing out at St. George in Phoenix, Arizona. This is Youth Ministry Month in the Antiochian Archdiocese, which may not apply across the board. I know other jurisdictions may not be doing that, but hopefully all of our jurisdictions do care about youth ministry. It's such an important part of the American Orthodox faith. And so I decided to do several episodes in a row of some interesting things that are happening related to youth ministry. Before we get into that, though, I want to give a couple of reminders. We have our digital evangelism conference that is coming up in 9 days. Saturday, October 19th. That's the next, not this coming Saturday, but the Saturday after. And we have a great lineup for you. This is a speed conference, so you're not going to get much depth. Each presenter is only going for 15 minutes. But I've been saying this for several weeks in a row, and I mean this. This is not Hollywood. These are not guys that are presenting that you can't get access to. I wanted you to get exposure to the talking about in these different topics like email, Facebook, Instagram, stuff like that, blogging, podcasting. Then you can reach out to them. They're happy to help you and talk to you and answer your questions and respond to your emails. So that's why they've come on here, is to just kind of give you a glimpse. I know you're probably not going to watch the whole 4 hours. I don't expect that. Just look at the topics that you're interested in and the presenters. Go check those out. We will do our best to record it, but there's no guarantees. It is technology. Technology often fails us. So I can't promise anything, but we're going to do our best to record it and make that available later on. The second thing I want to mention, and you can't see it because of how close I am to my camera, but I'm wearing my Project Mexico t-shirt today from a year ago when I went to Project Mexico. I hope that you've seen Building Hope, the documentary that the Antiochian Archdiocese put out about mission trips and how important mission trips are for not just our youth, but for the whole family. That when a church sends a group and you've got dad and mom and little brother and little sister all working side by side, slinging concrete and drilling, it's amazing. It's the flip side of the coin to sending them to camp. Camp's important. I want them to get that full Orthodox culture all day, every day for a week or two. But the other side of that coin is sending them on mission trips. And so I'm going to give you just a little sneak peek to let you know that the Antiochian Archdiocese is currently working on how can we provide some domestic mission trips. Very excited about this. I don't have details yet. We're very close to providing some details. And it's very exciting, and we're hoping to roll this out as quickly as possible. We're this close. I mean, we are so close to rolling out those details. So I just want you to know about the mission trips that we're working on in the Antiochian Archdiocese, specifically organized by the Department of Missions and Evangelism. So that's all my announcements. Greg, I know who you are, but I don't know how many of our viewers know who you are. So do you mind giving like a 1-minute bio?
Sure. My name is Greg Abdullah. I was born and raised in the Pittsburgh area. Worked at the Antiochian Village throughout college while I was at Duquesne University. Spent a year at the Village working as the deanery coordinator, organizing different youth activities for the Deanery Western Pennsylvania. I needed more education, so I ended up going to seminary. Graduated with my MDiv from St. Vlad's in 2008. Following graduation, ended up in the St. George Cathedral in Worcester for 5 years as their youth director. And then after 5 years there, came down to St. George in Phoenix and was the youth pastor for a few years. And I'm currently the pastoral assistant here at St. George in Phoenix. My wife and I live down here and are having a blast in the beautiful cooler weather now that it's not 100 degrees.
And congratulations, you got married about a year ago.
Yeah, about a year and a half.
Year and a half. Year and a half. Okay, roughly.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm at the beach trying to work on my next documentary called In the
Nice.
Name of Choice. It's called In the Name of Choice. My internet here is awful, and I'm okay with that because I'm supposed to be offline working on editing. So I'm going to try to let you do the bulk of the talking so that I'm not irritating people with my digitizing.
I think it's
So
great.
I think you know what I want to hear in general, but I don't know where you think we should start related to your research and related to the work you're doing in Phoenix. So where do you want to start?
So I'll just jump in. In 2018, I earned my Doctor of Ministry from St. Vladimir Seminary, and my focus was on how youth are receiving the liturgy, how they are participating in liturgy, what they are doing to learn from liturgy, with the hope that we then can understand how to teach liturgy in a way that becomes the framework for youth ministry. So the vital elements that we see in the Great Commission of the apostles in Matthew 28 are go forth, make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, teaching them all to observe all that I have commanded you, and lo, I am with you always through the end of the age. Those three elements, baptism, teaching, and Christ being with us to the close of the age, are present first and foremost in our baptism, through baptism, chrismation, which is the beginning of our process to be taught, to learn, really. And then in the Eucharist, which we then also have present within the Divine Liturgy. We're invited, just like baptism is our initiation, we're invited with the words, come, let us worship and fall down before Christ. And then immediately following that, up until the point of Eucharist, we are being taught. We're being given the Troparion, the Kontakia, the gospel and epistle readings, the sermon, the anaphora itself, and then finally culminating with the Eucharist, when we receive the body of Christ so that we become the body of Christ, so that then we are sent out into the world just as the disciples are sent out into the world to bring God to the world, offering ourselves to them. So to begin all of that and to get to that kind of crazy headspace, I started by trying to figure out where kids actually are. How do they actually receive liturgy? How do they interpret liturgy? And to do that, I did a series of surveys. The first surveys I did were 22 subjects, all from St. George and Phoenix. And it was kind of like my baseline. Based on the results of those surveys, I then wrote a series of Sunday school lessons for that entire year, which eventually became scripts for down the line videos that would teach liturgy to kids in a Sunday school setting. And I used those scripts or those lessons for that entire year, 10 of them on the liturgy itself and 8 of them on the sacraments, to kind of teach what we believe, who we are, how we see ourselves as Orthodox Christians, so that that becomes the framework for their own discipleship. Following that initial research with just the kids from the parish here in Phoenix, I was able to send the surveys to the Antiochian Village, who were very, very awesome and very good to me, and gave the kids at winter camp the surveys. And I got 149 responses from 47 parishes and 3 jurisdictions, all talking about how they are receiving liturgy. What do they see happening? How do they see what's going on? It was pretty fascinating. The data that came back, the things that kids were saying. A lot of my presuppositions were kind of blown out of the water. Interestingly enough, most important is relationship. And that's kind of where my focus went. The things that the kids are getting, the kids that at least responded, seem to be really taking from liturgy is relationship matters and relief matters. They want to have relationships with their parents. They recognize the need for community. They see liturgy as communal in a much realer way than I think many adults do. It's not just something that they do because their parents are making them do it. And they are recognizing that their relationship with their priest. There was one kid who responded that he doesn't understand why his priest doesn't know his name, because he's known his family and he baptized him, and it's heartbreaking that the priest doesn't know the kid's name. I mean, this is the kid's language.
Wow.
By contrast, one of the kids said that they love listening to the sermon because their priest is chill because he knows their name. So just knowing someone's name, you know, gives them a feeling and a sense that they are valued, that they matter, and goes so far with when working with kids.
That's incredible. I know that our metropolitan, and as far as I know, most of the clergy I meet, most of the bishops I meet, but our metropolitan, I've heard him talk about more than once how hard he works to learn names, because he knows how important that is to our psychology.
Yeah, it's huge. It's really a huge thing, and it changes how things are received. You know, the number one reason people say they don't go to church is because they're mad at their priest. Okay, that's not a good reason to not go. But knowing someone's name is a step in the direction of adjusting that, building that relationship with the kids, so that when our kids are adults, this is a relationship that's already been formed. They already have an understanding. They're not afraid to have a conversation. We talk about our kids being the future, but the reality is they are the present. And understanding what their role is liturgically really goes far into helping them understand that they are the now of the church, not just the future of the church.
Yeah. So you mentioned this surprising remark about the child who was, you know, grasping with, or, you know, dealing with his priest not knowing his name. I don't know if it was a boy or girl, but the teenager. Was that maybe the most shocking? You said it kind of destroyed your presuppositions going through this research. Was that kind of the biggest part for you? That was the biggest blow, or was there something else?
No, I think the thing that I learned the most through the research was that we have done a very good job of giving definitions and not necessarily done a great job of actually inspiring kids to recognize that liturgy is for everyone. Now, there are some situations where there were kids who said things. I printed out some of the thoughts. Communion is my favorite part of the liturgy because everyone comes together and partakes of the Eucharist. That's beautiful.
Wow.
That's more than just saying, I like communion because it is the body and blood of Christ, you know, which that was an answer that was all over the place because that's what we've told them and that's what we've told them. There was one that was, you know, if no one came to liturgy, there wouldn't be a church community. So we all have a role. And that was in response to the question, do you feel that you have a role liturgically? You know, of all of the surveys, when asked, do you feel excluded? There were 2 answers that said yes. So by and large, 149 kids plus another 22 from Phoenix, they're not feeling like they're excluded from liturgy. What can we do now to cultivate them to understand that their role in liturgy, and when I say role in liturgy, I don't simply mean they have to either be an altar boy or be in the choir or hold a bread basket or usher. Like, that stuff is a start. But let's understand that roles in liturgy could also mean I stand there and I say amen. Roles in liturgy can also mean I stand there and I take care of someone's child so that that parent can focus in liturgy differently. Like, all of these things that we could possibly be doing to help other people is precisely what we're being taught to do liturgically anyway. We're being taught to give ourselves to one another. So why don't we embrace that and teach that as kind of a role. It's not this formally defined thing.
Well, I guess what I want to emphasize for just a moment, I think that's important is, the bulk of our congregations are standing there and worshiping. That's the high majority of what the congregation is doing. Yes, you have a choir, you have chanters, you have acolytes, you have ushers, right? We might have a nursery. I'm not, obviously they have all these roles, but the bulk of them are standing there and worshiping. And if they're not learning how to do that in their younger years, and if they're not seeing it modeled, then why would we think they're going to do that once they go off to college?
Right. I would take it a step further.
Yeah.
I would say that the bulk of our people are standing there. Our hope and our assumption is that they're standing there worshiping.
Yes.
Right? When I asked the question,
you sounded just like your dad when you said that. Well, sorry.
Sorry. Genetics and all.
It's genetics.
When asked, what are the things that distract you from the liturgy? The kids were beautifully honest. What other people are wearing, how my nails look, my homework, everything I need to do when I get home. These are things that pull our attention. And I mean, I'm a Steelers fan.
You want to show us? You want to move your head?
My flag is right there. But the Steelers kick off at the same time as Blessed is the Kingdom. On most Sundays, now that I live in Phoenix. So that is always something that is pulling my attention, that I'm fighting against. So we assume that people are standing there worshiping. But if we don't teach them how to worship, they can't stand there worshiping. And first and foremost, we can't teach them how to worship if we don't bring them. Our youth are dependent on their parents. When asked what factors determine how often they attend, 72% had responses related to families' desire to attend, families' health prohibiting attendance. Things like if my parents are out late on Saturday night, then I'm not able to go to church on Sunday morning. All these things that we just see as things that we're doing that we don't always realize have an effect on the kids.
Wow. So we're almost 20 minutes in. We probably have time for two more things. Where do you want to go next? And I want to mention something while you think about that. I heard your research. I heard a decent presentation on your research. I say decent because I had to leave early and I didn't get to hear the whole thing, and it was just getting ramped up. It was so good. It was out in Santa Barbara at St. Athanasius there. You did like a Friday night, Saturday 2-part retreat. And I was so hooked and fascinated. And then I had to go off and visit another church. I was very you left me very frustrated that I didn't get to hear the rest of it. But I wanted to point out that you are available to go make this presentation. I don't know how often you're doing it, but I know the whole church was buzzing because I talked to Father John Finley about your presentations, and they really I think you really have something valuable to share in this research that you were able to gather. So I just wanted to mention that you have done that. I don't know how many of them you've done. Is that the only one, or have you done several?
That was the first one. I do a little bit here and there, and I use it in a lot of different ways in the parish.
Okay, so I just wanted to throw that out there before we go to our next item. So what else do we need to be aware of?
When we make liturgy a priority as a family, then it becomes a priority for our youth. Full stop. When the church becomes a priority, then the life of the church becomes a priority for the family, becomes a priority for the youth. Many of the teens that I have worked with over the past 10 years in full-time parish ministry are in key positions in parishes now that they're young adults. And that's not to say that I did anything. That's not to say, like, look at what I'm doing. This is to say, the more that we spend our time training our kids so that they become fully integrated into the life of the community, that life becomes infectious, gets inside them, and becomes something that infuses their entire life and stays with them for their entire life.
I want to expand on that because this relates to a project that I've been working on with Father Matthew Howell up in Wasilla, Alaska, and a couple others on how to make this a priority for the family and not just the parents. Because I think it's easy for parents for us to, we want to, a lot of parents I meet, we want to worship, we want to focus, we want to pray, we want to read. And if we're not inclusive with our kids and not realizing that they're hungry for this stuff, we just have to meet them where they are. All of a sudden, we think we're making it a priority for the family, but it's really just a priority for mom and dad. And we don't really know how that's coming across to our children until we talk to them about it.
And unless we make it as a priority, even if it's just a priority for mom and dad, unless we make that something that happens at home, it's never going to become a priority for them. I was talking with someone recently about why are so many of our Protestant brothers and sisters so successful at educating their kids. Well, it's not because their Sunday school materials are so much better than our Sunday school materials. It's because their Sunday school materials are reinforcing things that are happening in the house. And unless something is reinforced at home, it's not ever going to be learned. I mean, we have to teach what we live, and we have to live what we teach. Otherwise, neither one, it's a disconnect that doesn't work. That doesn't jive, and that just doesn't teach anyone anything. I mean, it's really just sad to say that.
I have to give a plug. I am always plugging. I can't help it. I'm working on 2 related projects to what you just talked about. One of them is called Family-Based Youth Ministry. It came from a book called that, Family-Based Youth Ministry by Mark DeVries. It was given to me, and I read it, and we've changed the way we're doing our youth ministry now, and we're viewing ourselves at my church as, how do we support the family unit? How do we, what our job as youth workers is to reinforce the family. And the same thing that you brought up, and that I've just now trying to get an idea of below the iceberg of what this looks like, is family-based Christian ed. It's the same thing with Sunday school. How do we reinforce what's happening at home and not be a substitute? Because if it's a substitute, it's a really poor substitute. It's not gonna.
We started a family night here in the parish, which we've had in the past and went away from, and now we're back to. It's once a month. We have activities for the kids and a lesson for the kids. Father Chris is working with the dads in their own separate Bible study, and I'm working with the moms. Father Chris is talking about manhood through the lens of the prophet David, and my topic is priesthood of motherhood, which is looking at the lives of not just saints, married saints who were parents who raised saints, specifically mothers. So we talked about Saint Sophia, we talked about the Theotokos, we talked about my own mother, to make it a tangible reality, something that's happening in action. We're going to look at the life of Mother Alexandra, who was a Romanian princess who had children of her own, who went into the monastic life and started multiple monasteries in the U.S. and just, we have to teach parents as much as we have to teach our kids. There's a fascinating book by Metropolitan Anthony Bloom called Churchianity versus Christianity, and I read it and over the summer, and it's mind-boggling. It's available from SVS Press. And are we Christians or are we Churchians? Are we following Christ, or are we simply going to church because it's something that has a cultural and familial base, but really doesn't have any tangibility into our being full members of the community?
Well, we have time for you to close us out. So what do you want to be the the parting words?
Keep plugging.
Okay.
I mean, all that we can do is just keep teaching, keep plugging away, and keep, grinding to make sure that all that we're doing is helping our youth, who are the now of the church, live in that reality so that they can flourish.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate what you're doing. I don't know if last week we talked with Drew Garrison, who's in Memphis, about being a full-time youth worker, what that looks like. I think if I remember correctly, you're full-time in Phoenix.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And the one thing I was passing along is that what I'm excited to see is that the youth ministry position, the importance of this for our youth workers, it seems to be trending up we're seeing more and more churches hiring or looking to hire or looking to figure out how to put more resources into this. So, I wanted you on so that you could share that you're a resource, you're available, you have a lot of
Without
important
question.
research. And I just am really thankful for the research you've done, the work you're doing in Phoenix. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Adam. I appreciate it.
I have one last question. Is your doctoral thesis something like that? If I'm a youth worker, I would enjoy reading, or is it more of an academic presentation? Like, I don't know where it fits. And
I'm not an academic. I don't pretend to be academic. There could be pretty tangible.
Okay, so there could be some decent value for youth workers who are interested in getting some insights.
Yeah.
Where is that available?
You can email me and I can send you a copy. It's not really available yet.
Okay. All right. Well, that's it for us today. I'm so thankful that you came on. You're available at St. George Antiochian Orthodox Church in Phoenix. So if you want to reach out to Greg and contact him, you can contact him there. I'll put some contact information for the church in our comment section, so you can get a hold of him. And
you can get us through the website at www.stgeorgeaz.org.
Okay, I will put that in the comment section. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you so much, Adam.
All right. God bless.
Thanks.